Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I have 4 different articles that I want to point out to you. And yeah, they are like all on different subjects, but they're all things I think you're going to be interested in. So we're going to first start out with this one from the National Review. Michigan City Clerk charged with altering ballots in 2018 midterms. This came out on September 24th of this year. And yeah, in Michigan, this Sharikia Hawkins was charged Monday with 6 felony counts for allegedly altering absentee ballots during the November 2018 election in her capacity as city clerk for the Detroit suburb of Southfield, Michigan. Hawkins, a 38-year-old registered Democrat, oh, are we surprised? Stands accused of altering 193 absentee ballots. She was arraigned Monday in Southfield on charges including falsifying returns or records, forgery of a public record, misconduct in office, and multiple counts of using a computer to commit a crime. She was released on $15,000 bond. The alleged misconduct was discovered after the Oakland County Clerk's Office noticed that 193 voter files had been changed to reflect that the voters failed to include a valid signature or return date when all of the implicated voters had in fact included both items. Should we take a guess as to which party those people voted for? The county clerk's office later discovered the original voter files in the trash at the election division office. The Michigan State Police then launched an investigation that resulted in Hawkins' arrest. Yeah, and I love the way that they put this. In a statement announcing the charges, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, both of whom are Democrats, stressed that Hawkins' behavior was anomalous and did not affect any election outcomes. You know, they keep saying that. They say, this is just a very rare thing. It just doesn't happen. There is no such thing as voter or election fraud. Right. Yeah, that's what we believe. Yeah. Anyway, voting is fundamental to the very essence of our democracy, Nessel said during a Monday news conference. It is incumbent upon state governments to safeguard the electoral process and ensure that every voter's right to cast a ballot is protected, and that the people there that are counting the votes don't count some votes more than others, right? So I thought it was just very interesting. And look at this. The Michigan Democratic Party honored Hawkins this year with the prestigious Dingle Levin Award at its annual Legacy Dinner in Detroit. And she was included in the Michigan Chronicle's 40 Under 40 list in 2017. Ooh, she was honored by the DNC in Michigan. Well, again, that's the kind of behavior they think is appropriate, I guess. So, very interesting. And so now they're starting to look at the previous elections that she was part of, because there were some really close ones. And so they're going to start looking into it. And there's a group called Michigan Rising Action, which is a local branch of the conservative advocacy group. American Rising is now calling for a sweeping investigation into all of the elections that Hawkins has overseen in her nearly 10-year career. Sounds good to me. Be interesting to find out what the results of that are. So there you go. I thought you would be interested to see that. As always, I'll put the links down below so you can read the article for yourself and you can share it. And I think it's a good thing to remind people that this is going on. And, how many of them does it take before they admit that there is this kind of election fraud? How many instances of it do we have to have before they start saying, you know what, this is a problem? So anyway, that's the first one I wanted to share with you. The second one was this article right here. Top Dem says AG Barr is endangering relationships with key U.S. allies. Okay, now this is NBC News, all right? So you understand the perspective they're coming from, and it is definitely written anti-Trump. And the person they quote the most is Senator Mark Warner, who is the ranking member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And, he's a Democrat, so not surprising. The comments he makes are negative, that this would be an outrage. Can you imagine if the CIA was asked to provide damaging evidence on a political opponent in Australia? There would be outrage. Well, I got news for you. The CIA asked people from other countries to give dirt on a political opponent in our country. So there should be outrage. It's just, oh. Okay, now, for those who may not know, when it's talking about key U.S. allies, okay, this has to do with the Five Eyes. Now, if you haven't heard about the Five Eyes, you might want to watch this video that YouTube gave the big D to, because they didn't think people should know that this was going on. But anyway, I thought maybe you would like to know, because this organization, the Five Eyes, it's actually an alliance of 5 different countries, and they are the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And those 5 countries have made a deal with each other because they all have laws in their country where they can't spy on their own citizens. So what they did was they all got together and said, hey, you know what? We can get around that if you spy on our citizens and we spy on yours. And then we don't have to worry about that pesky little law. Well, we have, the Fourth Amendment, which means they got to have a warrant to do this stuff. Well, this is how they were getting around it. And this is one of the reasons why Trump has been talking a lot to New Zealand and to Australia. Yeah, those are part of it. And of course, the UK. And so, yeah, that was a big part of it. And so here we have Mark Warner, who is whining about, AG Barr is endangering our relationships with these countries. Yeah, no, it happened in 2016. I wish you'd have been that concerned about it when Obama was in office and they were running the scam with, Comey and McCabe and all these guys. Yeah, you should have worried about it then. But oh no, Brennan was pulling the strings, so, Anyway, so this is what he's saying. Attorney General William Barr is harming America's relationships with its closest allies by pressuring them to produce intelligence about the Russia investigation in an effort to help President Trump politically, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee charged Thursday in an exclusive interview with NBC News. Now, I want to tell you this. You may not understand how articles are written, but when you write an article, the very first paragraph has to have the entire point you want to get across, your main point, because a lot of people, you have a certain demographic that will only read the headline. Okay, so you've got to have a good headline. And of course, this headline, very negative against AG Barr, right? And then this right here also is trying to target Trump a little bit there. And then you have this first paragraph, which again is giving the Democrat side and taking their side against Barr and making it sound really bad against AG Barr. Okay? Then you can go on and progressively you put things that are of lesser importance, because fewer and fewer people will read all the way to the end of the article. And so what this left-wing media has been doing is they put the shocker up here at the top, the thing that sounds the worst about Trump or about anyone in his administration. And then if there's any exculpatory evidence, which we're going to be talking about in the next video, that's going to be a little bit more about the whole Flynn thing, because I did find the DOJ document and I want to make sure that I get you up to speed on that. So then they put anything like that way down at the bottom, so very few people will actually read it. Okay? So that's what they do, and that is what is going on with this. This is the part everybody's going to see, and they're going to say, oh my goodness, William Barr is selling us out. He is taking Trump's side in this political battle, and he's trying to bully people into giving us dirt on his opponents. No. What they're doing is not giving dirt on the opponents. They're producing actual evidence of crimes committed by people in our own government. That's what they're giving. and they're not being pressured into it. So it's in their best interest to help get to the bottom of it, because they've got people in their own countries that have been part of this, both Australia and the UK. So they need to clear their own names. They need to get to the bottom of it for their own sake. So they're not being pressured. See, that's a lie. They're not pressured. And that's what they were doing with this whole Biden-Ukraine thing. At no time was Zelensky pressured into doing anything about that. And that's what you have to say when people will come up to you and they, Biden, he's attacking Biden. No, he never pressured them to give him dirt on his political opponent. What he did was ask for an investigation into allegations of criminal activity from 2016. That is what our president's supposed to be doing. So, and it's what our AG is supposed to be doing. And that's what, Barr is trying to get to the bottom of this. He has been traveling around, and this is driving the Democrats crazy because they know he's finding out the truth. When you go through here, Warner U.S. intelligence leaders have expressed their concerns to me privately on this. Well, I'm kind of thinking that the ones who have are the ones who are guilty. So, yeah, I'm sure they have. To be honest, I'm sure that they have expressed their concerns privately to him because they are all scared crazy on this. Because they're all implicated. So I can imagine, yeah, he's been hearing about it. But, and he wonders why, Barr didn't come to them, to that committee. Well, the reason is because that committee is very well known for having leakers in it. And probably he's the one leaking right there. So it's really something that needs to be uncovered. And this whole deal with Five Eyes, of course, they didn't couch it as, we're going to spy on each other's citizens. That's not how it's been presented to the public. To the public, it's more, we need to make sure that there's no real bad, terrorism or any threats going on behind the scenes. So we're just monitoring people from other countries to make sure that there's no real threats there. Yeah. Well, that's not what it really was about, but that's just their cover story, in my opinion. And so, Barr has also enlisted Trump to ask heads of state for cooperation. That's because, again, their people were implicated in this. And Barr has visited the UK and Italy in this effort. Oh, yeah, he's digging it up. The inquiry is being run by the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, John Durham, who previously investigated CIA torture. It's unclear how many foreign trips Durham has made. I thought that was an interesting statement there. I don't know. He's been out there digging up the truth. Boy, I don't know how long it's going to take Durham, but I sure hope it doesn't take real long. Because, I was going to tell you, Rudy Giuliani, in an interview he did with Martha MacCallum, which, by the way, I was very disappointed with Martha MacCallum in that, because she was like assuming Trump is totally guilty. That's how all of her questions went. She sounded like she was somebody from like MSNBC or CNN. It was, I had to look twice. It's like, no, this is Martha. Why is she doing that? What's going on here? Because, as I said in the previous video, the real question is, what if Trump's right? Then it should be investigated. If Trump is right that Biden was guilty of this and that he did this, which we've all seen the video, so it's not like Trump's pulling this out of his wazoo. This is really what happened. We all have seen the video. So you can't say Biden's not guilty of putting pressure and doing a quid pro quo on this with the Ukraine president, not the current one, the previous one. Okay, so I don't understand how people have seen that video and then they can still say that it's been debunked. It's like, what? No, look, listen to the video. Anyway, back to this. I digress. Anyway, in a letter released Thursday, the Australian ambassador confirmed to Senator Lindsey Graham that his government is assisting the Barr-Durham inquiry, but he pushed back against Graham's characterization of the role of an Australian diplomat whose tip to the FBI about a Trump campaign aide boasting about the Russians having Democratic emails launched the FBI investigation. Well, it probably didn't, because I think it was actually going on a long time before that. So, this is what happens. Now, if you remember, a long time ago, it seems like forever ago, I did a little story. I told you a little story about the dog poop brownies. And it was about this father who made these brownies. His kids came home. They had been begging him to go see this movie that had a bunch of garbage in it. And he knew they weren't ready to see this movie. It wasn't good for them. And so they came home. He was going to illustrate it. And they came home and he had these brownies. And the house smelled wonderful. And the kids come in and they were like, "Oh, Dad, can we have a brownie?" And he's like, "Yeah, now I want you to know before you eat these that I put the finest ingredients in here. I put the finest flour and eggs, and I chose specially good chocolate to put in there." And the kids were like, "Yeah, I don't care. Just give me one of the brownies. They smell so good." And so finally he said, "All right, now I'm going to give you a brownie, but I want to tell you one more thing about them because I have a very special ingredient in there." Now, there's not very much of it. It's just a little bit, but it's in there, and I wanted to make sure you knew it before you ate any of them. And they said, What? Just tell us what it is." And he said, "It's just a little tiny bit of dog poop." And of course, you know what the kids did. Yeah, they weren't going to eat them, which is a normal and logical response, right? Well, this is the problem that we have with a lot that's going on. Now, the father was trying to point out that just like the dog poop brownies, the movie these kids wanted to see might have a lot of very good things in it, but there was still some bad dog poop stuff in it that they weren't ready, or at least the father didn't think they were ready to view. And so that was something that he used to illustrate it. But this is the illustration with this. There's a lot of dog poop in what we're hearing. And sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's a lot. It's kind of hard to tell. So we have to be very, very careful with what we're listening to, because some of it is just not true. And, like in this, well, the dog poop probably is that while maybe the tip wasn't what actually started, it didn't launch the FBI investigation, because I think that was planned ahead of time, but it probably was a big part of it. So see, there you got a little bit of lie in there, twisting it around, making it not totally true. And so that really is what's going on. And of course, we reject your characterization of his role, the Australian diplomat. Well, we know that's true. So that's going to come out whether they want it or not. But anyway, it says here, I thought this was interesting. Barr has said that he has seen information suggesting there were irregularities with their way surveillance was conducted by intelligence agencies in the Russia investigation. So, Barr has said this. So it's true. It really is true. And he is trying to get to the facts. And of course, Warner says, well, if he wants the facts, he should have just come to us because we know it all. Our committee is the Intel Committee. We know everything. That's kind of what Adam Schiff thinks about his committee, that they know everything too. So anyway, yes, the Senate Intelligence did release a type of report. It was not a full report. It says has not released a full report on its investigation, but it did have a conclusion. The conclusion was there was no collusion. So, the House Intel before Schiff took over had a conclusion that there was no collusion with the Trump campaign in Russia. And then we had the Senate say the same thing. And then we had the Mueller report say the same thing. How many times do you have to say it before they believe it? It's kind of like with the election fraud. How many times do you have to see evidence of it before you admit to it? Anyway, so the next thing I want to show you is not technically something that's going on now. It actually is a video from 2012. And the reason I put this up there, it came to my mind and I was trying to look for it. And I remembered enough that I could find this one. So the other one, it's still lost. I don't know if I'm ever going to find that one. But anyway, this is a video that I watched back in 2012. And I've got to tell you, I've seen an awful lot of videos because I've hung out on YouTube for a long time, even before I started putting up my own videos. And, sometimes you watch videos that stay with you for a very long time and you always remember them. Well, this was one that I remembered because it was very impactful to me. It's a Tony Robbins video, and I'm not a huge Tony Robbins fan, but this is about putting in perspective the U.S. debt. Now, obviously, this was in 2012, and it was under Obama, but a lot of times when we're dealing with especially younger people, they don't quite have the understanding of just how big our debt is. And they don't really understand the whole concept of rich people and rich companies, because the whole basis of socialism that they are putting out there right now, a lot of the Democrats, is that these rich people need to have their money taken from them so it can be given to poor people. Okay? And that really is the heart of what they're seeing socialism as. That rich people have way too much money. Someone needs to take it from them and give it to me because I don't have anything. And this is one reason why the younger people tend toward socialism, because they don't have anything. And so to them, they would benefit. Whereas if it's somebody who's worked for a while and you've started to build up, some equity, you've got your house, you've got a car, and you're starting to think, wait a minute, they're going to take this away from me and give me something half as good or a quarter as good. And, just so they can give my money to somebody else. So see, it's the people who have nothing that love socialism. But then they realize that it's not going to allow them to move up. It just holds everybody in a state of poverty. So this is one of the things. If you can share this video, it might help give them a perspective, because what he does is he talks about taking money from these different sources. And then how long would that fund the government for? And it's stunning. At least to me, it was very stunning. And we have more debt now. So, it's really kind of creepy what all he says here. But I'm going to leave that link down below. Watch it. It really was very, very good. And it's about 20 minutes long. So worth it. Definitely worth it. Anyway, this is the last one that I have to share with you. This is from the Gateway Pundit. And this is Obama's State and Justice Departments assisted billionaire and Democrat donor George Soros in attempt to control Ukraine's oil and gas industry. And remember again, Biden's son was put in at the head of an oil and gas industry. Surprise, surprise. Well, this came out October 5th, so it's very current here. And it says billionaire George Soros is tight with the Democrat Party and perhaps its biggest donor. His organizations were connected to many anti-American actions during the Obama administration and many more anti-American and anti-Trump actions since the 2016 election. Now we know that Obama's State and Justice Departments were assisting George Soros in his attempt to control the Ukraine. And of course, it says, at the time of the 2017 inauguration, we reported that Soros-related groups were related to every major protest since the November election. Now, remember, they were protesting actually both sides at that point because they just wanted to cause confusion and chaos and make it look like Trump's election was the worst thing under the sun and that all of America was up in arms because of it. Now, admittedly, a lot of people had meltdowns. I do understand that. But it wasn't near as bad as what they thought and what they made it out to be. So anyway, here's a clip of George Soros on 60 Minutes. Yeah, this guy, I don't have to say much because if you're watching this video, chances are you already know about George Soros and everything. And, he was reportedly behind 50 groups involved in the women's protests the day after the inauguration. And he funded Black Lives Matter protests. And of course, Trump, this was a year ago. I mean, this was October 5th in 2018. The very rude elevator screamers, if you remember back when Kavanaugh, the whole Kavanaugh thing was going on, there were some people that went into an elevator with some of the undecided swing votes, and they started yelling at them. Yeah, they are paid professionals only looking to make senators look bad. Don't fall for it. Also, look at all of the professionally made identical signs, because they had all those protests about Kavanaugh, paid for by Soros and others. These are not signs made in the basement from love. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, all of this was professionally done. So that was about the Kavanaugh thing. And in the past month alone, we reported that a Soros assistant was the official escort for the 16-year-old global warming expert, this girl. Soros was also involved in the Russia collusion scam. He also has been involved with numerous politicians in Europe. And, of course, this is what they're talking. Now, I had this video, I think. No, I don't think I showed this one. But here it is, and it's really good to watch. But I'm just going to give you a real quick summary, because at one point, he was talking about how Biden was boasting about getting that prosecutor fired. Well, that prosecutor was also looking into Soros. So not only did Biden do himself a favor for his son, but it looks like he was also doing Georgie a favor. So anyway, there's an article here by the Epoch Times that's really good because it talks about it. Billionaire George Soros and a group of wealthy donors from New York and California have paid $50 million to sustain an ongoing private Russia investigation conducted by former British spy Christopher Steele, research firm Fusion GPS, and a former staffer for Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein. And so it's just very interesting what all they're talking about here. And Soros needed to get rid of President Trump, who had upset his apple cart. I'll say he upset a lot of apple carts. And he still is, and I hope it continues, because there's a lot of bad apples in those apple carts. Actually, they're not just bad apples, they're poison apples. And they're trying to get them to the American people and feed them to us. And the best thing our president can do to protect us is to overturn those apple carts. So anyway, one thing that we now know that Soros might want to keep hidden is that George Soros wanted to take over the oil and gas industry in the Ukraine. And then John Solomon has an article here. And again, one of the things I like about the Gateway Pundit is when they quote something, you can click on this and it will take you to that article. So it's nice sometimes to read the full article instead of just the clips that you take out of it. Liberal mega donor George Soros has made some big bets during the last U.S. presidential election. One was that Hillary Clinton would win the presidency. He lost. Anyway, another was that he could reshape Ukraine's government to his liking and that his business empire might find fertile ground in that former Soviet state. So when Donald Trump's improbable march to the White House picked up steam in the spring of 2016, Team Soros marched to the top of the State Department to protect some of those investments, according to newly released department memos, providing a rare glimpse into the Democratic donors' extraordinary access to the Obama administration. Then Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland received repeated calls, emails, and meeting requests from Soros, according to the memos obtained under the Freedom of Information Act by the conservative group Citizens United. Why do you think the Democrats want to get rid of the Citizens United ruling? Yeah, they hate Citizens United. Almost probably as much as they hate Judicial Watch. So anyway, Solomon continued. Likewise, Soros set out a bold vision in an internal 2014 memo for his Open Society Foundation to help root out corruption in Ukraine and build a civil society after the Maidan Revolution ousted the country's Russia-friendly president. It worked with the U.S. Department of Justice officials to leverage the so-called kleptocracy initiative to fight corruption. The initiative enabled DOJ to prosecute or seek asset forfeitures from foreigners suspected of corruption, even if the crimes didn't technically occur on U.S. soil. Such initiatives are noble in principle, but in Ukraine, some targets had political and business implications as well. For example, one DOJ investigation in 2014 targeted Ukrainian oligarch Dmitry Firtash. He and Soros both have significant energy interests in Europe and rival plans to rebuild Ukraine. After Firtash's indictment, Soros's business announced plans to invest $1 billion in Ukraine. Since then, significant problems have arisen with the DOJ's case, thwarting efforts to extradite Firtash to the U.S. for trial. And finally, Solomon notes, and when Ukraine's general prosecutor sought to investigate one of the country's nonprofits partially funded by Soros during 2016, the State Department pressured Ukrainian officials to drop the case. And that was where Rudy was talking about it. This last piece by Solomon is probably what Rudy has alluded to in his comments about Soros in the Ukraine. The Obama State Department intervened in the Ukraine and stopped the case against Soros. Based on Rudy's comments, it is likely he has support for Obama's State Department actions. And we also know that the DOJ went too far with Firtash. And that's where the Daily Caller talks about Andrew Weissman. The ink was still drying on special counsel Robert Mueller's appointment papers when his chief deputy, the famous aggressive and occasionally controversial prosecutor Andrew Weissman, made a bold but secret overture in early June 2017. Weissman quietly reached out to the American lawyers for Ukrainian oligarch Dmitry Firtash with a tempting offer. Give us some dirt on Donald Trump in the Russia case, and Team Mueller might make his 2014 U.S. criminal charges go away. Weissman is anything but occasionally controversial. Attorney Sidney Powell was on the Mark Levin show in January and discussed dirty cops and attorneys Robert Mueller and Andrew Weissman from their years overseeing the Enron and Arthur Andersen cases. Their actions were corrupt and criminal and cost the jobs, savings, and careers of more than 85,000 individuals at Andersen and Enron. A shocking piece of information from The Hill then noted that a foreign national brought Mueller and Weissman's illegal actions to a foreign court, and the foreign court listened and responded accordingly. And this was another part of Solomon in The Hill. Remarkably, Firtash turned down Weissman's plea overtures. Even though the oligarch has been trapped in Austria for 5 years, fighting extradition on the U.S. charges in Chicago alleging that he engaged in bribery and corruption in India related to a U.S. aerospace deal, he denies the charges. The oligarch's defense team told me that Firtash rejected the deal because he didn't have credible information or evidence on the topics Weissman outlined. But now, as Firtash escalates his fight to avoid extradition, the Weissman overture is being offered to an Austrian court as potential defense evidence that the DOJ's prosecution is flawed by bogus evidence and political motivations. This leads us to question if Firtash provided any information on Soros or Obama's state or Justice Departments that were involved in setting him up in Austria. Does Rudy or Barr have this information as well? Yeah, and I also wanted to point out that in one of Rudy's interviews, and I can't remember, I don't think it was this one, but it could have been, he mentioned that his investigation was already over, that he did his investigation from before 2016. Evidently, he was starting on it before Trump was even elected, I think, or maybe just right afterwards. But then he went all the way through 2018, and he indicated that his investigation ended in 2018 and that it has not continued. That's why he was saying, how can it be against Joe Biden as Trump's political opponent when he ended it in 2018? And at the time, we didn't know Joe Biden was going to run for president because there was an iffy time. Joe Biden didn't just jump into the ring right away. So in 2018, there were no candidates against Trump. So he didn't have an opponent at the time. So the investigation couldn't have been into, Trump's 2020 opponent. It was into something that happened back in 2016. See, that's what, when somebody, tries to get you to talk about the Biden thing, say, now, wait a minute. This investigation took place back then, and it was about 2016. It's never been about 2020. So, yeah. And really, when people are talking to you, if they try to say, well, Rudy shouldn't be involved and this and that, and they're trying to get you off the subject, you need to bring them back to the heart of it and say, no, wait a minute. Is Joe Biden now, because he's a candidate, he's above the law? If that's true, then everybody's just going to become a candidate so they can't be accused of doing anything wrong. If Joe Biden did do something wrong, don't you think that needs to be uncovered? And, the video. I'm sorry, just watch the video. It's pretty obvious that he was guilty of trying to strong arm him. And now that I know that, Soros was involved too, I'm really thinking that, yeah, he was doing it with total knowledge of what he was doing and that George Soros was part of it. Now, I want to remind you guys, try to get this around a little bit more. Look at this. We're so close to 1,000, 956. So go, go, go. You guys have been doing fantastic getting this out there. I've seen it on Twitter like a zillion times. By the way, I did a little purge on my Twitter feed today. I tried to only get rid of people that weren't following me because I need to get a little more room to follow people that are following me. So if I happen to have, unfollowed you in the last day, please don't take that personally. Just follow me again and I'll try to follow you back as much as I can. Anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and all the links will be down below so you can check everything out for yourself. So have a great Sunday, and I will see y'all later.